Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Roger Upton, the Chairman of the committee, and with us this evening are Councillor Maureen Stockwood, the Vice Chairman, immediately in front of me, and Councillors Bailey, Clark, Gray, Phillips, Major, Mason, Purdue-Horan, and Thomas. And also present from the officers are Leanne Ashmore, Director of Development and Economic Development, Rebecca Sells, Principal Solicitor, Michelle Dunn to my right, your left, Principal Area Planning Officer, accompanied with Paul Taylor, Planning Officer, and Greg Sharman, Planning Officer. Also present Tracy Coop and Laura Webb of Democratic Services. If I may, some housekeeping issues as usual. No fire alarm is expected this evening. If it does sound, then follow the exit signs to the assembly point at the far corner of the car park, or follow one of us if you're not confident of the way. If you could turn your mobile phones to silent, that would be appreciated. There are public toilets in the foyer for those of you who are not familiar with it, and feel free to use them if you need to. I don't think it'll be a long meeting, but if it is, we'll have a comfort break around 9 o'clock. But seems to me a fairly short agenda. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence and substitute members. I think we have some apologies and substitutes. So
we do, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Healy, we have Councillor Phillips as a substitute, and we have apologies from Councillor Gowland, but there is no substitute for Councillor Gowland. Thank you.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda is any declarations of interest. Are there any declarations under the Code of Conduct or the Planning Code from anybody in the room? I don't see any, so I take that as a no. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 10th of June. Are members of the committee agreed that those minutes are correct? And if so, could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Proposed by Debbie Mason, second by the Vice Chair Maureen. Councillor Maureen Stockwood.
There's a typo in the planning reference of the first item on the agenda. This is an extra 0 to remove.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'll take that as read, subject to that amendment then. Thank you. So we can now move on to item 4 of the agenda, which is to discuss this evening's planning applications. As usual, for those of you subbing and not familiar with me as the chairman, if I just politely remind you, I assume you've read the reports and in detail, and I appreciate if we don't repeat the points too often, the same points if they've already been made, and try and keep them fairly concise and relevant. This is a quasi-judicial meeting, and I would like it to be conducted with the appropriate professionalism, I know you do, and the behaviour, and only really material planning issues should be debated this evening. Firstly, we have to note the report of the Director of Growth and Economic Development, which gives us an overview of the planning process and the applications to be considered this evening. Can I take that as read and approved? Thank you. Right. The first application is 21/01352/full Brookland House, 4 Park Lane, Sutton Bonington. Construction of a 2-storey 4-bedroom dwelling with swimming pool and attached 3-car garage. Construction of stables, block and tack room. If I could ask the officer, which I think is it Mr. Taylor? Mr. Taylor is going to present for your consideration. Over to you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I should just make sure we are live on the web with the relevant drawings. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As you say, the proposal is a full application for a detached 4-bedroom dwelling, stables and equine paddocks in the village of Sutton Bonington on land to the rear of 4 Park Lane. Part of the site is located within flood zone 2, and the site is also identified as being within 50 metres of the conservation area and within 50 metres of a listed building, namely 6 Park Lane. The dwellings on the western side of Park Lane, which hopefully my cursor's on the screen here, are predominantly a mixture of varying ages, sizes and designs, and are linear in their form, save for a few areas where the built form deviates from this prevailing pattern. Notable examples are Park Lane, Barrington Court and Gables Lee. The application proposes a large 2-storey detached dwelling with an enclosed swimming pool building running along its southeastern elevation and an attached 3-bay garage projecting forward of the northeastern corner of the building. The dwelling itself would be located within flood zone 1. The proposal also includes a new access track along the southeast boundary of the site, leading to a new single-storey 3-box stable and tack room to be located in the southwest corner of the site. The application plans also detail the formation of 2 paddocks between the proposed residential garden, the dwelling and the stable building. The gardens, the paddock and the stable building would be built within flood zone 2. As set out in the appraisal section of the report, the application site adjoins the edge of the village, and therefore an assessment as to whether the development is in the settlement or in the open countryside must be made. Officers consider that the site is not isolated, as it adjoins the existing built form of the village with no fields or other land between the proposal site and the built up part of the village. For the same reasoning, it's also considered that the site is not located beyond the physical edge of the settlement. Furthermore, whilst the village of Sutton Bonington is not identified within policy 3 of the core strategy as a key settlement for growth, the village does have an identified allocated site for development of up to 80 dwellings allocated within the local plan part 2. On this basis, the village is considered to be in a sustainable location capable of supporting modest levels of residential growth. Therefore, officers are satisfied that the site is acceptable in principle for small-scale development on unallocated sites, and as such, policy 11 is considered to be the most appropriate against which the application should be assessed. The principle of stable buildings in this location is not considered to be contentious. Objections have been received from neighbouring properties, the parish council and the ward member, and these are set out in your agenda papers. Due to the scale of the proposed dwelling, its impact on the character and appearance of the area, any impact on amenities of any adjoining properties and on heritage assets must be considered. The report is detailed in its assessment of these factors, amongst others, and whilst officers do not dispute that this is a very large dwelling, due to its siting, its setback from Park Lane and the presence of other intervening large buildings, it is not considered that the dwelling would be prominent from any public vantage points. Furthermore, due to the separation distances and the orientation of the neighbouring properties, officers are satisfied that the proposal accords with the requirements of the policies to overcome any concerns regarding privacy and impacts on residential amenity. The proposed dwelling is also considered to have an acceptable relationship to the nearby heritage assets, and officers are happy that the new dwelling would not adversely impact on the setting of the conservation area and would continue to preserve the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings, which is a goal considered desirable within sections 66 and 72, the Planning, Listed Building and Conservation Area Act 1990. The residential garden, paddocks and stable building, as previously stated, would be located within flood zone 2. However, officers have assessed the Environment Agency's standing advice and concluded that the domestic garden would be classified as water compatible development and the stables are classified as less vulnerable development. Both of these classifications are listed as appropriate developments within flood zone 2. The Environment Agency have also confirmed that they are satisfied, subject to conditions, that any impacts can be suitably mitigated and they are not objecting to the proposal. If I can just guide members through some photographs and some plans to indicate the proposal before them. The red line plan on the screen currently shows the site. So as previously indicated, you've got the largely linear form of the village, save for the exceptions I've previously pointed out. This is an aerial photograph, not quite as up to date as some of the photographs I'll take you through in a moment. There are a number of dwellings that have been constructed on Barrington Court to the immediate north of the application site. This is the village primary school and playing fields here for those who may be familiar with the village. Park Lane, as previously described, is a private drive that currently serves 5 properties. That's 3 on the road frontage and 2 that have subsequently built behind. And there is a U-shaped form of stable buildings that are part of the neighbouring dwelling number 4. This is the road frontage showing the access track that leads down to Park Drive. These are the properties that I've just pointed out that are built on the frontage, and the neighbouring property located where the cursor is now is the listed building, which is the photograph in your screen now. So this is the listed building. Other side of this hedge line is where the track runs down, and these are the two buildings, number 2 and number 4, that have been constructed within the last 10 years or so. Moving down the lane, you see the first of the dwellings, number 2, and beyond that, number 4, and the stable buildings on the left-hand side. Just beyond this gateway is where the application site begins. Again, moving past number 2, you get the frontage of number 4, and again, the aforementioned gateway. So this is on your right-hand side, you've got the domestic garden for number 4. On the left-hand side, you have a equine exercise area that is proposed to be removed as part of the proposal. Again, on the right-hand side of the image, you start to see the neighbouring properties of Barrington Court start to appear. The post and rail fence where the cursor is on your screen at the moment is the edge of the application site. The house is proposed to be beyond that, and the stables down at approximately where my cursor is showing on the screen at the moment. So this is the rear elevation of number 4. Again, the properties of Barrington Court indicated just beyond in the background of the image. And again, moving down the central access track in the site as it's currently configured, the rear of number 4, properties in Barrington Court. This is approximately half of the application site because it extends to the other side of the track where the photographer stood at this point in time. Again, looking down that central access track, the land is currently used as equine paddocks with some field shelters within them. A more formal stable is proposed in the bottom left-hand corner of the image you can see before you. Looking back up the site, the access track is proposed to run along this hedge line down the side of the site. You just about make out the rear of number 4. The house would sit roughly in this location here. Again, moving back the slight towards that, again, you get the properties on Barrington Court and the neighbouring agricultural buildings and agricultural use that exists to the immediate north of the site. Again, a plan showing the site as it's currently configured, neighbouring properties to the north, the listed building I showed you on the frontage, the red line showing the site and its access arrangements. This plan shows you the configuration of the property proposed, so the main body of the house, the garage attached but projecting forward, the swimming pool elevation to the side. You'll note that the rear boundary of the domestic garden aligns with the neighbouring garden for number 3 Barrington Court. Therefore, officers are satisfied that the site isn't projecting any further into the existing countryside and the existing arrangements for properties to the north, or indeed the older properties on Gable Lee. Again, some plans showing the dimensions. This plan shows the flood line, so just confirming that the property is proposed within flood zone 1, which is the right-hand side of the line, the paddocks and the stable building within flood zone 2 to the left-hand side of that line. Again, dimensions of the plan and the sort of relationship to the boundaries. Number 2 and number 4 are the properties I showed you as we walk down the access track. This is the property, its configuration and its orientation as proposed, the access track running down the side, and the proposed stables in the bottom corner of the site. Again, plans showing dimensions and relationships to the existing neighbouring properties in the region of 25 to 30 metres separation distances between the proposed application and the application. And again, just noting the orientation of the properties at a approximately 45-degree angle to the application site. These are the proposed elevations of the property. So this would be the front elevation that you would see walking down the track. This would be the rear elevation looking down towards the paddocks and the stable. This is the side elevation facing towards the neighbouring properties on Barrington Court. Again, floor plan showing the generous internal accommodation as proposed. Again, garage building in this location, swimming pool in this location, main body of the dwelling in the middle of the image, and a roof plan. This is the proposed stable building, a fairly conventional stable building as you might expect to see in such a location, timber clad, 3 stables and a tack room, raised on a plinth in relation to the flood zone issues that it's the applicant is keen that his horses don't become flooded and suffer from injury or problems from wet hooves. And again, a plan showing the built form and the fencing proposed in that particular location. A couple of 3D images submitted by the architect to show the front elevation of the property and the garage, the rear elevation of the property, and the side elevation of the swimming pool, which would face towards the primary school location. Thank you, Chair. The proposal, for the reasons set out in the report, whilst sizable, is considered to be of a high standard of design and to not adversely affect the character or pattern of the development by reasons of its scale, bulk, form, layout, or materials. Furthermore, whilst it's accepted that the proposal would undoubtedly change the relationship between the neighbouring dwellings and the application site, change does not automatically equate to harm. And for the reasons set out, the proposal is not considered to cause significant adverse impacts on the amenity of nearby residents. Subject to the conditions proposed, officers are of the opinion that the proposal would not harm, would cause no harm in relation to highway safety, trees, ecology, residential amenity, or flooding, and are therefore recommending that members grant permission subject to the conditions and informatives set out in the agenda papers and the amendments and those added to contained within the late reps. And apologies, I should have pointed out this afternoon that late reps have been received in respect to the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I just wanted to pick up on the late representations. Do we want to make a brief synopsis of those?
Yes, of course, Chairman.
Good.
Comment received from the primary school indicating that they have submitted an application for a rebuilding programme. Officers advise members that you have to consider the relationship that currently exists on site. Whilst it's appreciated that the school may have submitted an application, we're not aware of any plans that have been submitted for consideration, approved or granted, and therefore the relationships for that school application would have to be considered in the context as and when they are forthcoming. Comments received from the Environment Agency, again, just clarifying points made by the agent. The agent was asked to clarify how the drainage would be dealt with. Verbally, they've indicated that there would be tanks that would hold the water and would drain to the appropriate drainage system. A condition is proposed to be a revision to condition 7, just to capture those statements from the agent to ensure that they are part of any approval should members resolve to grant permission. There was also clarification with regards to the concrete plinth upon which the stables would be built. So there's a proposed revision to condition 2 just to encapsulate those additional drawings. We also received a letter of support from a local resident. The comments are stated verbatim in the report, so the officers have got no further comment to make on that. And a point that will probably be relevant to all 3 applications tonight, Chairman, there has recently, within the last week, been revisions to the National Planning Policy Framework, primarily renumbering of a number of the paragraphs referred to in the report. No substantive changes as a result of those changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we now
Chairman, excuse me, can I just interrupt? Being as this has been broadcast, thank you, because anybody looking in from outside would have assumed we were considering Colston Bassett, not Sutton Bonington.
well spotted, Councillor Clark. Thank you. Right, it takes us to the speakers, and I think we've only got one speaker on this application, and it's Councillor Matt Barney. I can see him sitting over there. So if you'd like to take the table and chair, Councillor. I think you're fairly familiar with the procedures, but nevertheless, you have up to 5 minutes when you start speaking by pressing the mic. When you're ready to start, press the microphone, and the red light is on, but you'll be told when you've 30 seconds left. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank the whole committee and indeed the officer, Mr. Taylor, who I have spoken to on numerous occasions about this application, and I very much appreciated his input and counsel in guiding my comments and thoughts. However, I would like to say that having looked again this evening at the plans, I've also been to look at the site again myself this evening, and I'd just like to convey to the committee what I feel does not come across in what's been presented tonight, in that the images you've seen have presented and projected, I think what you'll agree is a very tranquil rural setting. And indeed, that is the setting in which this proposal sits. The site is very, very well known to myself. I spent the first 6 years of my education looking at it as an attendee and a pupil at Sutton Bonington Primary School, and the school adjoins the site. I'd just like to take a moment just to walk the committee through the village scene that exists in that location. So alongside the village primary school, and those of you who are familiar with that, it's a very rural village setting in which the school sits, is the 14th century monastery of Hobgoblins, which is now 2 dwellings. Itself is an extremely large building, but it's situated in a large plot, and as such is not very dominating, as you can see in that picture, and conveys quite a rural and humble presence. Alongside that is the site of the former Old Plough pub, for those of you that ever frequented it, where some terrace housing was built a number of years ago. Again, I'd suggest that this is in keeping very much with the frontage and the situation of the linear development which runs on that part of Park Lane in St Bonington. Behind that terrace housing are 2 very, very large dwellings, which I think, so my mind, and obviously beauty's in the eye of the beholder, it's a very subjective thing, but do steer away from the vernacular of all of the other properties and dwellings and buildings in the vicinity. And those 2 buildings, those 2 dwellings have been built by the applicant, and I believe that he and his family reside in them and have done for a good few years. You'll also see to the left on that image, the stables. There's already ample stablage at that site. And again, I'm not entirely sure what's stored in those stables, but to my eye, it wasn't horses. And so I would question the need for yet further stabling as a requirement of this site. But if we continue back up towards the post office from the school, we get to Barrington Court. And that is where I'd just like to spend a small moment, because I believe it's the residents of Barrington Court that will be most affected forever by this development, if the committee are minded to approve it this evening. Barrington Court is an area that I also know very well. Indeed, my first memory of it was returning a peacock to the site bundled in the back of my mother's Fiat Panda at the age of about 6 years old. It's a site that's well known to all of the village. It's a former farmyard site in which Barrington Court has been constructed. And the family that still reside there today, their roots go back to almost a century in Sutton Bonington. They're a very well-known family. And they themselves developed a number of properties on the former farmyard site of that farming development, with the buildings being placed on the site and location of former agricultural buildings. And I know at the time the family were quite frustrated in that they put plans forward to this council for more elaborate and perhaps less in keeping dwellings than the ones which have now been built and which they reside. But I must applaud the Rushcliffe Borough Council, because the buildings that have been built on Barrington Court are of a nature which is completely and entirely in keeping with the setting and the rural nature of that location. And indeed, if you visit that farmyard, it still feels like just that, like it did when I returned there with a peacock at the age of 6. It still has that farm feel and presence. However, we come to the application. The building that's set before you tonight for approval, in my mind, and again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, these things are very personal, is enormous. In terms of its scale and bulk, it even surpasses the 2 previous dwellings, which in my mind are a departure from the surrounding vicinity. It is excessive in the extreme. Unlike Hobgoblins, the 14th century monastery, it's squeezing the maximum it can out of its footprint and floor plan. And whilst I'm not against large houses, and I don't want to appear hypocritical, I'm not living in the most tiny house in Sutton Bonington myself. I just think this is extreme. I'd just like to come on to the planning points. How long have I got left? Okay, very quickly. So to just relay the parish council's points, which I concur with, it projects massively into the open countryside. It's entirely beyond the curtilage of the previous development to the south and beyond the stable block, and even introduces a new stable block. Its design and scale dwarfs even the large residential properties that the applicant pushed to boundaries of scale compared to all other properties close by. Its size and scale will hugely impact all elements around it, including wildlife such as bats and common features of this green space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Right, members of the committee, I think we're now ready to discuss this application and come to a decision. So who wants to start the debate? Somebody must. Councillor Mason, thank you.
Thank you. A lot has been said about the height and the mass of the building. Is there a photograph of say Barrington Court again,
where you could show the actual mass that you would see when you came up the drive, whether it's from Barrington Court or whether it's up the drive. Is there somewhere where you can say, because it has been, and in the report, and even yourself has said about the size of it, but sometimes it's a bit difficult to imagine how it will fit in with the scenes that we have before us, and I sometimes find it helpful just to have a line to draw.
No street scene plan as such, Councillor Mason, but this photograph does show that the two less traditional style dwellings that have been constructed. This is number 2, this is number 4 beyond. The stables sit roughly sort of beneath the canopy of where that evergreen tree is. The house would be beyond that.
So would you see it from anywhere, any of the photos that you've already had?
I couldn't categorically say that you wouldn't see it.
No,
Obviously,
no. I just wondered if there was a line, you know, just how it would fit in with the roof design that
we don't have that information from the architect, I'm afraid, Councillor Mason. The building is shown to be at a maximum height 10.1 metres height, which is not uncommon for a 2-storey domestic dwelling. Yes, it has a large footprint, but in terms of its overall height, it is not uncharacteristic of modern dwellings.
Thank you.
Councillor Major.
Okay. You referenced the line of the garden in your talk, and I'm just, there's nothing I can see in the conditions that would determine that line couldn't be increased at some point. And I'm just wondering if one of the sort of justifications of approval would be that it doesn't extend beyond the line of the village. Then what would be to stop them subsuming one of those pastures and turning it into a huge garden if we aren't putting a condition on that?
That would constitute a change of use. So it's currently proposed to be equine paddock. That is not a domestic use. If they were to propose or by virtue of stealth seek to enlarge their garden, it's clearly indicated in terms of dimensions on the plans before members tonight. If the authority were alerted to that, either by an application or by a concerned resident, we have the power to investigate and take the appropriate action.
Councillor Thomas and then Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Just 2 questions really. Would any trees be lost during the proposal? And the second question is, can you give an example of the, you know, and show how big the footprint of the house is compared to other houses, other say 4-bedroom detached houses? Thank you.
In answer to your first question, Councillor Thomas, no trees are proposed to be lost. There are no trees within the site other than on the perimeter. It's currently used as equine paddocks. Therefore, there's been a degree of new planting on the edge, but nothing within the plans to indicate that anything would be lost. And there are conditions requiring confirmation as to what boundary treatments would be put in terms of any additional landscaping. In terms of the comparison question that you've asked, forgive me, I don't know how many bedrooms are within the existing properties at 2 and 4 Park Lane as they stand, but that's the footprint of number 2, that's the footprint of number 4, that is the footprint of what's before you tonight. There are no 2 ways around it. It is a large building.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Chairman. Just a few questions. Firstly, the fact it is a large building, does it actually come within the? Just can't remember if there is some policy, national policy generally, that relates to very large buildings that then basically become a feature in their own right. If you're talking about a stately home, for instance, you can have large buildings of extra special character, if you like. I mean, does it come within those realms of very large building. I can't find the sewage disposal. Is there, with it being partly in a flood zone, it talks about effluent from the swimming pool, but what about general domestic effluent? Is that covered, or in times of flood, is that going to create a problem? Has it been correctly addressed? I noticed one of the comments on page 27 relates to the noise from vehicle movements along loose aggregate driveway. And yes, that can be quite a nuisance if there's a driveway going close to other dwellings, which in fact, I'm assuming that the loose aggregate driveway doesn't start until after it's past those existing new houses. I think there was a photograph that. Right, so just going back down there to the first gateway, is that loose gravel or is that the hard metal? Right, oh, so it's the existing loose gravel. Okay. And the good old favourites now about electric charging points. Just to confirm that there's a condition that includes those. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, in terms of large buildings, that's primarily in relation to buildings that are considered to be in the isolated countryside. For the reasons set out in the report, that's not considered to be the case in this instance because it immediately adjoins the built form. It's more to do with measures to control people, either starting with something the size of a bungalow and aspirations of Blenheim Palace, or continuous creeping extensions and involvement with that. In terms of the query regarding sewage treatments, in the late reps, there is a proposed revision to the wording of condition 7 that seeks to deal with the implementation of sort of provision for the implementation of foul and surface water, including swimming pool backwash, to be submitted. So it's not just for the swimming pool, it's for the property itself as well, to ensure that there are no impacts on the adjoining flood zone 2. In terms of noise from the gravel, as sort of indicated in the photograph, the track exists. It is loosely gravelled. I have actually discussed the matter with colleagues in environmental health. They've advised that they wouldn't seek to be objecting on the basis that the surfacing might cause noise disturbance. They've not received any records. They're not aware of any concerns historically having been made on this site, or indeed, I would say, on many other sites within the borough. And in terms of the electric vehicle charging point, there is a condition 8 within the agenda papers. Easily done, easily done.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips has indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking at that photograph, the access road is quite narrow. It's obviously going to be a big build. It's going to be lots of trucks, tracked vehicles going up and down there, possible materials delivered, materials taken away. And I'm aware that to the left of this access road, there is a grade 2 listed wall. It's quite crumbly. And I'm just thinking, with all the vibration of the deliveries coming and going, what sort of protection has that grade 2 listed wall and archway got? Thank you.
You are right. The building and its surroundings, the neighbouring building, is a listed structure. Condition 10 proposes a construction management plan, so seeking details of how the constructor would service the site in terms of construction vehicles, because you say large dwelling, reasonable to believe there would be a number of trades on site or required on site at various stages of construction, deliveries, collection, clearing away what's on the site at the moment, delivering building materials to it. That's largely what that condition seeks to secure and control.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking on page 27, and this is local residents and general public's comments, and it's point K, residential amenity, the loss of privacy overlooking from first floor windows and balcony. Can you remind us, please, Mr. Taylor, how far away this is likely to be from Barrington Court? I'm guessing it's probably residents of Barrington Court that are concerned about this.
I suspect you are correct. I think from recollection, the letters all came from the separate properties on Barrington Court. The rear balcony has a canopy roof over it, but it is open-sided. The edge of the balcony, this location here, to the boundary of the site is 16.5 metres. The depth of the neighbouring garden is 21, I think it's 21.1 metres. So from the edge of the balcony to the back corner of the property would be 36.7 metres.
Thank you. And could I also just have another query on the same comment K? They're talking about the proposed dwelling has a disproportionate existing buildings, and they're obviously concerned about noise and disturbance, but also about the glare from large areas of glazing. Is there anything that can be done to make sure that is perhaps non-reflective glass that is used?
In terms of the elevation closest to Barrington Court, it would be the side elevation, this northwest elevation. There are 6 openings proposed, 3 at ground floor, 3 at first floor. There is a condition proposed within the report that seeks that all of the first floor windows within that opening be obscure glazed and fixed shut.
I remember that now, thank you.
There's also further conditions that seeks to restrict any further openings within the elevation that would be the rear of the garage, that's within the wall, the stairwell that services it, and the roof slope, because there is the potential that whether it's a rear or a side elevation may leave channels for permitted developments to be open. So officers have sought to control that. Similarly, any further openings within the roof slope have sought to be removed by way of condition.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Major.
Yeah, I appreciate it is a very large building, but I think through the discussion and through the presentation, I've been persuaded that as much can be done, has been done to mitigate the impact on the local residents. So I'm very happy to support the motion to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Major. So have we got a seconder for the motion to approve? Councillor Clark and Councillor Phillips. So that's good. I think we can probably go to the vote. So all those in favour of the recommendation to approve, raise your hands.
That's 10, Chair, unanimous decision.
Unanimous, so the application is approved. Thank you. That takes us to the second item this evening. Which is land west of School Lane, Colston, Bassett, Nottinghamshire, application 21/00354/full. The proposed erection of carport garden store to be served by previously approved vehicular access. Michelle Dunn, you would like to present? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I just want to confirm that the comments received prior to the preparation of the report have been circulated. So this is an application site within the centre of Colston Bassett. It relates to a site with the benefit of planning permission for the erection of a single dwelling. The site sits within the conservation area. And this location plan shows the outline of the application site in red. It shows existing buildings in the surroundings. So we have the Martins Arms, which is a public house and also a grade 2 listed building. And then we have residential properties to the south and to the west. The site separated from the Martins Arms by a car park which serves that particular facility. This is an aerial photograph taken before works have commenced on site. Members will note there's a number of trees within the site and also the backdrop of the trees to the north, which is within an area that is identified as a positive area in the conservation area. What I'm going to do is to take members through photographs of the area. I'm going to start to the south of the application site facing towards a residential property called Ascot House, and then a move along School Lane, showing the committee of the current state of the site. Building work has commenced on the authorised dwelling previously approved, and then move to the north of the site, turning back to see the site in context with the rest of the street scene. So this is Ascot House. So this is to the south of the development site. Members will note that it is a plantard and brick building. This is the application site to the rear of the wall. Note the mature trees within the vicinity of the site and within the site itself. Construction work has commenced, and we can see where the access to the site is at present. Buildings opposite the site, residential properties, again brick structures along the frontage of School Lane. Close-up of the current state of the site with, like I say, building work has commenced on the dwelling. Looking into the site, see the side elevations of Ascot House there, and the backdrop of trees that are within the open space to the rear of the site. We're looking back towards Ascot House there. The application site is quite clearly shown on the right-hand side. So this is an application for a carport within a site that does have the benefit of planning permission for a single dwelling. Members may recall that the dwelling was considered by a planning committee. This plan shows the location of the approved dwelling and also provides a street scene context with the dwelling previously approved in the location there. Carport that is proposed as part of this application sits in this area here. So just to stress that the application before the committee relates only to the proposed erection of the carport, which also includes a garden store. Planning permission is required for this structure because permitted development rights were taken away when the application for the dwelling was approved. Just wanted to advise the committee that the application that was originally submitted was for this development as shown on this plan. It was a triple carport, and you'll note that access was proposed directly in front of the structure. Your officers were concerned about the scale and also the introduction of the driveway in that location, and have therefore negotiated amendments to the application. This includes, so that was the previous plans originally submitted with the application, quite clearly a three-form carport. The application in front of the committee tonight is for a reduced scheme. It's a two-bay carport with a garden store to the right-hand side. Members will note that a driveway is actually proposed and reverts back to that previously approved on the original plans. The structure itself would have a width of 6 meters and a depth of 5 meters, and then incorporates a small garden store to the side. Incorporates a pitched roof with a maximum height of 3.9 meters. Members will note that the structure is proposed to be open to the School Lane frontage and is constructed with cedar shingle roof and feather edge side elevations. It's proposed to be sited to the side of the dwelling and is set back from the road frontage. Chairman, the report clearly sets out the material planning considerations in relation to this application, including the impact of the development on the conservation area, a list of buildings in the area, and covers the statutory requirement to consider the requirements of section 66 and 72 the Planning List of Buildings and Conservation Area Act and the relevant policies in the development plan, which includes a neighbourhood plan, which has recently been adopted. It is considered that the siting and distance from the dwelling, its modest scale and traditional design materials will complement the dwelling under construction and adequately retain the open character of the site and remain sympathetic to the rural character of School Lane. Officers are satisfied that it would not represent overdevelopment of the site, would have no undue impact on visual or residential amenity in the area. Councillors will note that your conservation officer raises no objections to the application as revised, and that conditions are suggested to allow control over any future potential changes to the external appearance of the building, and also ensures the protection of trees on the site. Your officers are satisfied that the proposal will serve to preserve the character and appearance of the area and the setting of the nearby listed building, a goal which is desirable within section 66 and 72 of the Planning List of Building and Conservation Areas Act 1990, and the proposal is therefore considered positively in relation to the duty under those sections. On this basis, I present to you a recommendation to grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out on page 57 and 58 of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ms Dunn. We have two speakers to this report this evening. The first one is Nigel Maygoffing, apologies, from Colston Bassett Parish Council, and Councillor Cumberbatch from the Ward Council. So if our first speaker could take the table, I'd appreciate that. You have, as I say to the other speaker, 5 minutes to speak. When you press the microphone, the red light comes on, the clock starts ticking, and you'll be warned if you've got 30 seconds left. So when you're ready, feel free. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Many thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight on behalf of Colston Bassett Parish Council. As we know, development in the conservation area should either conserve or enhance that area. This application does neither. It may appear that Colston Bassett Parish Council appear unduly concerned about what might consider a small garage. It is far from the truth. If the garage was essential, as has been repeatedly stressed, then clearly it should have been included in the original planning submission and the footprint of that building. The initial material error of allowing overdevelopment of this site in the heart of the conservation area has already been acknowledged by your own conservation area officer, and should not be compounded by allowing yet another overdevelopment that will inflict even further harm. There is no offset or excuse for allowing that harm. Mention has been made of the timber sheds and of the specific design of this building. I should try to correct the officer that that is actually not the case of these being traditional materials. To give you a chapter and verse, the use of timber cladding is not a locally distinctive or local vernacular material. That is from your own 1601946 full application. And also that black timber boarding is something of an atypical feature within southern Nottinghamshire. Again, I quote you 19-00914 full, comments made by your officers. To that end, this application fails on substantive material grounds. There's no traditional material as described by your officer. That is erroneous. Overdevelopment of the site has been a grave concern to the Parish Council, and allowance of this application will not only be contrary to repeated material objections, but also contrary to the village conservation area and neighbourhood plan documentation. An allowance could also appear to represent support for the continued, almost effective misrepresentation of original planning applications by allowing infinite additions and ignoring the statutory need to prevent harm and overdevelopment in the conservation area. As we saw from the picture, this building sited where it is reduces the open aspect for which Colston Bassett is known between the buildings. That is in the conservation statement. Unfortunately, with this application, little has been done to date, working with Rushcliffe Planning to protect this core conservation area site. Part of a noted street scene wall has already been demolished and not reinstated, and the revised plans as presented to you now suggest that it might not be reinstated in full, which is actually contrary to the original permission granted. Regrettably, the planning department also failed in responsibility to protect noted mature trees, initially failing to visit the site within the allocated time, which resulted in the felling of the tree that they had identified should be retained. Felling of that tree has obviously opened up the site for further access and development. One failure to protect should clearly not permit another failure to enhance and preserve. This application is contrary to policies 10 and 11 of your local plan part 1 and policies 1 and 28 of your local plan part 2, which primarily set out to preserve or enhance conservation areas. The application neither preserves nor enhances. As it does not meet these key requirements, how can permission be granted? The application represents further overdevelopment using inappropriate materials identified by your own planning department and will cause harm in the heart of the conservation area. In making this representation, the parish council seek to prevent further harm to the village, conserve and enhance, overdevelopment, no mitigation of harm. If a garage was essential, why was it not included in the original huge building permitted? Please do not allow further harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. May. Go Rothing. Do we want to clean the table and chairs in order for the next speaker, please? Thank you. Right, Councillor. I think you know the rules, don't you? I've been here quite a few times. Press the red light and the clock starts ticking, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very sensitive application for Colston Bassett Village, and the addition of a wooden structure adjacent to this high-profile dwelling, be it domestic, garage or store, would detract from the setting of the new residence and overdevelop the site, being at the heart of the conservation area, adjacent to a significant Grade 2 listed property, and does not therefore seek and secure the high-quality design this authority requests. Paragraph 32 of the officer's report is therefore very relevant, stating the desirability of the new development making a positive contribution to local character and distinctiveness. I trust members have familiarised themselves with the property and read paragraph 38 of the officer's report in order to get a feel for the village. Paragraph 39 talks about open spaces, to which this site makes contribution through its valued openness. This proposal will further reduce that openness, not enhancing the conservation area, nor adding to the character and distinctiveness as per paragraph 32. This is referred to in the council appeal statement in 2017, where Rushcliffe, this planning authority, state the openness of the site, together with its boundary wall, contribute to the rural character of School Lane. The current approved plan sought to reduce the footprint as recommended by the officer. This application will only revert to the original refused position, contrary to that previous officer advice. Further, permitted development rights were removed, one would assume, to prevent such development. There have been several previous planning refusals on this site, largely due to overdevelopment or the size of footprint, having a significant adverse effect on the rural character of School Lane, as had been stated by this planning authority. I have sent members extracts from the Rushcliffe appeal statement and subsequent officer reports to demonstrate the need for consistency. We need consistency from our planners when making decisions, particularly when they're on the same site. The appeal inspector again in 2017 referred to the sporadic development pattern and the open spaces between buildings in Colston Bassett. Here we're proposing to place this development on the same building site as the host, limiting the open space around the development, overdeveloping the site and losing that characteristic openness, impacting the conservation area so valued in the neighbourhood plan and in this part of the village, and it would seem in the past by this authority. Should this unfortunately be permitted, I request the following conditions. All permitted development rights again be removed to prevent even further overdevelopment of the site, reinstatement of the boundary wall, landscaping approval prior to commencement of the build, including the driveway, lighting to be limited and subject to RBC approval as per application 19-02622, full. Refusal should be on the grounds of harm to the conservation area. Application is contrary to policy 10 of the local plan, not in accord with the neighbourhood plan, overdevelopment of the site, and poor design. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cumberlack. Right, that's the last of our two speakers, which I think we can get the message that they're both objecting. We can now ask the officers to respond to some of the questions. There's quite a lot of questions from both our speakers. I've jotted down a few, but I'm sure there's some more. To me, the openness of the local area where this application is, the allegation it's not vernacular architectural materials should have been included in the original application, boundary wall, openness, need for consistency, removal of permitted development rights and various other conditions that were requested on boundary wall, landscaping, lighting, etc., etc. Quite a few there, officers, I'm afraid, and I'll pass it over to you to try and respond to those in some order.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, I'm not going to go in any particular order. I'm just going to make some comments based on the notes I've got in front of me. We fully accept the sensitive nature of this site. Officers have certainly attempted to reduce any impact from the proposal. Hence, obviously, we've got the revisions that are now subject to committee's decision. There have been enforcement matters on the site. Obviously, those enforcement matters are being dealt with separately. I can assure members that this application does not change the requirements of the approved plans for the existing dwelling, and officers will obviously ensure that the approval is in compliance with those approved plans. In terms of landscaping, Officers are satisfied that the proposed carport is outside of the protection zone of the existing trees on the site. There is a landscaping condition proposed on the original permission, which requires detail to be submitted and approved. So that will be pursued. Permitted development rights were removed on the original dwelling. That does not prevent applicants submitting applications and the council considering applications. It gives the council extra control to ensure that any such developments are appropriate for this setting. There's been a lot of discussion in terms of the materials proposed, and officers maintain that they are traditional. It's oak frame building, wooden elevations. The report set out at paragraph 41 explains the design concept of the building, the dwelling previously approved. It's a traditional barn conversion style appearance to the front elevation with a 2-story height threshing barns to give an agricultural type of feel to that setting. And we are satisfied that the use of timber cladding as set out in paragraph 43 with a natural timber finish should obviously weather and would help the structure to meld into the surroundings, which has the backdrop of the mature vegetation. I think we're satisfied, as I've clearly said, that it will help to preserve the conservation area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we can open it to debate. Who would like to start us on the debate? Councillor Clark, showing you'd like to go.
Thank you, Chairman. We often have to deal with large, multiple applications of large housing estates, and sometimes we have to look at very small villages with a lot of character, and each of them have their place within Rushcliffe. But what is important is that where we have small areas with character, that we actually preserve or conserve those areas. And Councillor Combalak used the word twice, consistency, which is the word I was going to use. I've scribbled down lots of notes, and I hope I can read all my own writing okay, because we do have to be consistent here, and I don't think this recommendation provides that consistency, because it is incumbent upon this committee to ensure that we can, where possible and where there are clear conservation areas with a lot of character, that we do actually maintain those. And it isn't just a question of just filling in all the villages and filling in all the open spaces in our villages. We've got to make sure that that character is maintained. The officer referred to paragraph 43 on page 55 and the timber cladding, and that this is one of the most common materials used in construction of domestic outbuildings. Mr. Chairman, that's not the point. The point is that Colston Bassett and School Lane in particular, and I'd appreciate, could we possibly have up the photograph of School Lane, not of Ascot House, the other side? No, there was another view. Yep, that's it. Yep. So I think it's quite clear to see the character of School Lane is brick. And to introduce a timber material is quite incongruous and quite out of keeping with the character. And bear in mind that the conservation area is there to maintain the character of the village, and also to maintain the open spaces as well. I'm glad to see that there have been some negotiation and change, which is welcome, to bring back the actual entranceway so that it's not destroying the character of the front wall. So that is to be commended. But nevertheless, in my view, it's the materials, it's the taking away or filling in more of the open space, which you've already heard is part of the character, and the consistency comes back because you've heard that in the past officers have referred to the character and the open space of the conservation area. The neighbourhood plan was recently adopted, and that works hand in hand with the conservation area. And you've heard that the application is contrary to policy 10 of the local plan in relation to maintaining the character of conservation areas. So I'm going to propose refusal there, Mr. Chairman. First of all, on the grounds of poor design, in that the materials are incongruous and not in keeping with or consistent with the traditional materials used in the Colston Bassett conservation area, and especially School Lane. Secondly, it's harmful to the conservation area due to the additional harm to the attractiveness, the visual amenities and the special character of the conservation area, including open spaces. Thirdly, it's contrary to policy 10 of the local plan in relation to maintaining the character of conservation areas, and that it is not in keeping with the neighbourhood plan, as it's against the spirit of sporadic development in this part of the village. So I think that it's the materials, Mr. Chairman, I think is the really major factor. Couple that with taking away more of the open space character of the conservation area, and that's why I believe that we should refuse this application. And I'm moving that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I've made a note as best I can on quite a lot of words there, but I've got the general trend of it. I think I'm right in saying we carry on with the debate and then we can come back to you as a valid motion. But have you got a seconder for that? No, I think I need to ask for a second at this point, don't I? Anybody prepared to second that alternative motion from Councillor Clark? Doesn't seem to be anybody. I think I'm right in saying it fails at that point. We carry on with the debate. Anybody else wish to talk to the item? I've got Councillor Thomas, and did I see Councillor Major? No, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Completely in sympathy with the ward member and what the ward member's saying, what Councillor Clark's saying, and what the parish council's saying. I do find it difficult to believe that the developer in this case could anticipate that the future residents would need a swimming pool and an enormous light well, but not a garage. Also take the point about the generic countryside rural construction not being in character with the area. But I think in order to put a brick building in this location, it would probably harm the trees because it would need foundations. I do think the harm has already been done on this plot in approving the house. The harm from the garage block is extra, but it's small compared to the harm that's already been done. If this goes to vote and is approved, I would ask for a condition of the amendment of condition 7, which talks about the appearance of the building, I would also want to say that the use of the building shouldn't be changed without it coming back for planning permission. I think also from Councillor Cumberlack's suggestions for conditions, I think permitted development rights are removed in condition 7. You'll probably correct me if I'm wrong. I think reinstatement of the boundary wall is that in the conditions for the original development, the original house, and also the landscape is. I think there's probably a possibility that additional lighting will be added on the garage building, and I think that should be added as a condition, as suggested by Councillor Cumberlack. Thank you.
Thank you. So just for my own clarification, you referred to condition number 7, which is all about no alterations to be made to external appearance of the car without prior approval of the Borough Council. Yeah, got that. And what was the one on the lighting?
Number 7 was, it says appearance, and I was wanting it to say appearance and use. And the condition, I'm not sure what Councillor Cumberlack asked for, but I think any proposals for lighting attached to this new building should require approval by the council.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Councillor Gray.
Thank you. I think this is a very interesting application. As someone new to the committee, seeing the previous application and compared to this, I think it just goes to show the importance of local plans and conservation areas. Trying to consider this and take on all of the representations that have been made, and look as well as I can as someone who's only visiting virtually. I mean, looking at School Lane, I can see there's actually a particularly lovely example of a timber frame building just as you enter School Lane, across from the village cross, with the seating area in there. So I think there is actually seems to be an example very, very close by. Also looking at the plot and imagining taking a walk down School Lane as I see it as a destination, somewhere you walk through, and trying to keep that open character that's been talked about. As you walk up through School Lane and you pass the pub car park, that's where you have this open vista to your right. And I read the representations before looking at the existing plan that had already been approved, and I sort of imagined something far sort of grander on that plot. But as I can see, it seems to be sort of held away and held back, so that openness as you pass the car park of the pub is still open towards the field. And then also looking at the situation of what's being proposed today, that appears to be sitting sort of in front of you as you'd walk up the lane, very much in line with the house. So it wouldn't close your vista, or perhaps would only for a very short time as you pass almost directly in front of it. So for me, it would seem there wasn't a great harm to that characteristic that's being discussed. So personally, although I understand the need for keeping this character, I very much see this as being part of it. I also think of this building weathering and how it would sit amongst the trees. Again, it seems to be very much sat. It's a single story. It's sat within a garden situation, and it'll be sat under trees. Very much needs to be in keeping. So personally, I would be minded to take the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Mason, you've indicated to speak.
We'll start with it. Okay. Okay. read the Borough Council's Conservation Officer's report and about the carport and on the initial plans, was it wood on the initial plans? I've read it a few times and I've read it again just now. Was it wood in the original? And in what way is it different now? Because in the beginning she says that highly visible, substantially increased the total development. The proposal would harm the setting of the Martin's Arms. And then with respect to the revised plan, she notes that there's a reduction in the size of the carport and considers the design and use of timber are appropriate to the rural character of the area. That reads to me as if the original one was slightly different other than wood. And I just wondered, it had originally been brick, and would that be more acceptable?
So the originally submitted plans, which are in front of you at the moment on the screen, it was a single cedar shingle roof covering, and the rear and sides to be clad in feather edge timber cladding. So I think it was the overall scale plus the materials that she was particularly concerned about, and clearly having reviewed the revised plans, she felt that it was more appropriate to the site, and obviously removed her initial concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've a mind to support the officer's recommendation.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I take the point that we need to strive for consistency, but you know, we must consider each case on its merit, and there are exceptions. And has been said, so I'll just briefly repeat it. To me, it fits in nicely, actually, the wooden appearance, this cladding with a treed area anyway. So I'm happy to actually move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stopwood. Two more speakers. Is anybody there seconding? Councillor, both of you, right.
I wanted to second, but add Councillor Thomas's lighting plan.
Understood, Councillor Major. Right, so we have a proposer and a seconder with Councillor Major and the conditions that Councillor Thomas mentioned about condition number 7, I think. We've taken those on board, haven't we?
Yeah, the use in condition 7, but also the new one of the lighting scheme.
Yeah, and the lighting, yeah.
Thanks.
So I think we could move to the vote on that basis.
Can I just check that Councillor Stockwood's happy with those additional conditions as the move for the motion?
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you. Right, time to vote. All those in favour of the recommendation to grant planning permission with the amended conditions as we've just gone through, please raise your hands.
And all against?
Anyone against? Don't think there can be anybody left to
no, that's 9-1, so the motion carries.
9-1. 9 votes for and one against, so the motion is carried. Thank you. That takes us to the final item of this evening, which is 38 Florence Road, West Bridgeford. A proposed 2-storey and single-storey rear extension, side and rear dormer windows to existing roof, new front porch and internal alterations. Got it down as a resubmission of 20/02419/full. Mr. Sharman is taking this one, are you? Yes, I'll just wait till you change your seating. Thank you and welcome. So, When you're ready, Mr. Sharman, if you go through your presentation and just pick up on any late application. Yes, there are some points there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so members will be aware of the late representations that were circulated prior to the meeting on this application. So the application relates to 38 Florence Road in West Bridgford. It's a householder application for 2-storey and single-storey rear extensions, roof alterations, including side and rear dormers, and a front porch. So if I just take members through the site location. So you'll be able to see here the site's outlined in red. It's located within the urban area of West Bridgford, within a predominantly residential area. The property is on the south side of Florence Road, where all the properties benefit from south-facing gardens. Just moving across to the satellite imagery, just gives you a better idea of the style of the dwellings in the area, where you can see that it sits at the western end of a run of 5 similar detached dwellings that have all been extended variously over the years. And to the western side sits a slightly different design of dwelling, a semi-detached pair, which is slightly further forward in the plot, which I'll show later in the site photographs. Moving through the photographs, here you can see the site context. The application site sits to the centre of this image, where I'm circling here. It's a 2-storey traditional dwelling of red brick with a rosemary tiled roof. You can see number 40 is the rendered property, which sits to the east of the site, to the left-hand side as you view it here, and number 36, which sits to the west of the site, and that's the semi-detached property, which sits about 3 metres further forward in the plot. So this is just the front elevation of the property in question. You can see the existing driveway and front entrance. You can also see it has historically, 2008, had a 2-storey side extension as well. This is a view just down the side of the property, down the eastern side. The application property is on your right-hand side in this image, and to the left is the blank side elevation of the neighbour at number 40. That is a 2-storey side extension that was erected on that property in the past as well. This is a view to the rear of the property. Again, you can see to the side, the back of the 2-storey side extension previously approved. There's also a conservatory that was previously approved on the back of the property, and is currently a rear dormer as well, serving an office/bedroom in the roof space. Just gives you the context again of the neighbour at number 40 and number 36. Here's a closer view looking to the west towards number 36 Florence Road. You can see here that the property, as well as sitting further forward in its plot, is a different design. It's a typical Victorian L-shaped rear elevation with a 2-storey rear wing that comes off the back of the property. Then another view just looking towards the side of that rear wing, where you can see the windows in the side and the conservatory that's been put on the rear. And this is looking to the other side of the plot, past the conservatory to the east. This is number 40 Florence Road again, which just shows the established vegetation along the boundary between these properties. Just to demonstrate that to the rear of the site is a well-landscaped garden. There isn't any visibility across to the properties to the rear. These are some site photos taken from visits to the neighbouring sites. This is a closer view of the rear of 36 Florence Road. You can see the application site and the existing extension on the application site, the side extension to the right side of the image. These are 2 kitchen windows at the neighbour number 36 Florence Road. And that is the rear dining room window, which is a square bay type window. It's the only window serving that room. And here's just an image took standing in front of the dining room window looking out towards the rear. From number 40 Florence Road, again, just context, number 40 looking towards the application site. In the rear of number 40, they've got an existing conservatory sitting to the far side of the site. Closer to the application site, you've got a kitchen dining room with the window serving the kitchen element of the room closest to the application site, and dining room doors to the centre. Just moving to the application plans. So we have here in front of you the existing plans and elevations of the property, just again demonstrating the existing features on there. And moving through to the proposed plans, so you'll be able to see here a front gabled porch on the front elevation being proposed. You can see here the side dormer that is proposed, which links into the roof of the existing two-storey extension, sits down from the ridge with a hipped roof as well. The proposed side elevation here that I'm circling is a side elevation facing number 40 Florence Road. So you can see the two-storey and single-storey and part of the rear dormer where it comes out into the roof slopes. To the rear, you get a better idea of the configuration of the rear extensions. You've got the stepped two-storey extension with the furthest element, this point closest to number 40, and the setback element closer to number 36 and the single-storey below. You can see the back of the side dormer, which is set down, and you can also see the hip to gable style rear dormer window, which comes out on the back roof slope, matching the ridge height. Just a comparison plan that just shows the proposed and existing side by side for easier contrast. And this plan here just shows the 45-degree line of sight from the closest neighbouring windows. So from the kitchen window at number 40, ground floor, and again from the dining room window at number 36. And that's just superimposed overlooking the two-storey element of works you can see there indicated on the plan. So the report before members tonight sets out the material considerations in relation to the scheme before them. The main material considerations relate to design, amenity, and flood risk. In terms of flood risk, it's a house order scheme, so it needs to adhere to flood risk standing advice. The scheme at ground floor level proposes to match the internal floor levels of the existing house and therefore adheres to the standing advice. In terms of design, following revisions received through the scheme, the design is considered to be sympathetic to the character and appearance of the host property and is not considered to be over-intensive for the development site. In terms of amenity, following detailed consideration, the scheme is not considered to cause any significant impact to the neighbours at either 36 or 40. It is noted that there will be a change of outlook in terms of the properties and a change of vista and view for those properties. They will be able to see and note the extensions, but it is considered, after detailed consideration, it isn't considered that there will be any undue or significant overshadowing, overbearing or overlooking concerns. As such, the report is before members tonight and the application before members tonight for recommendation to approve as per the conditions and informatives within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharman. I congratulate you for the eloquency that you gave on what I would call quite a busy application from my experience of being a building surveyor. I find it interesting to interpret it into 3D, although I spent some time on the planning portal looking at it. Is it possible that we could have, I think it was slide number 3, the rear elevation, or, well, perhaps no, that one of those is good just for members to get the feel of. But we turn next to the speakers this evening. We have two, the applicant and an objector. And first is the applicant, Mr. Andy Garrard. Yes, he's here. Would you type the table, please, Mr. Garrard? Just to refresh you, you have up to 5 minutes from when you press the microphone. The red light will come on and you'll be told when you have 30 seconds towards finishing. So in your own time, when you feel comfortable, press the button and as I say, we're off.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I've come along today to provide some context for the application to extend our home, the details of which have just been presented to you. We are long-term residents of Florence Road, having bought number 38 18 years ago in August 2003. We undertook a previous extension in 2008, where a double-length garage situated in the garden separate to the house was removed, and the current integral garage plus a small addition to the kitchen was added directly to the side of the house. This extension also provided for a relocated bathroom and a loft room, which is used as a study and an occasional guest room. Our current patio was laid on the base of the previous garage just to give you an idea of the scale. Our main aim with the proposed extension now is to create some additional space within our home for both the immediate and longer term. Specifically, my wife's 87-year-old mother would be able to move in with us as she is currently living on her own in Leicester. Also, my wife and I both expect to be spending more time working from home going forward. We used to both work 4 to 5 days a week in our offices. We're now expecting to be spending at least 2 days a week working from home going forward. So we absolutely want to ensure that our home remains in keeping with the immediate area, both along the street view from Florence Road and also the views from Priory Road properties back across the gardens and the rear of the Florence Road houses. We also do not want to overdevelop the plot. This is going to be our long-term home and we want to enjoy the garden, so we have sought to balance the internal and external spaces. We understand and appreciate how our house sits in relation to the neighbouring properties, and we're not seeking to squeeze in a 5th bedroom or dramatically oversize the house relative to the plot. The design which our architect has come up with allows us to increase the size of each of the existing 4 bedrooms to varying degrees, add a utility room and a porch area, create more focused home working areas, and bring the conservatory area into the house. The design achieves all this with the only additional ground space being taken up by the proposed works being for the relocated kitchen and the porch at the front. We are proposing to build over the exact dimensions of the existing conservatory. We have worked with the planning officer through various iterations to make our objectives fit in with the neighbouring properties. The initial feedback from Mr. Sharman in respect to the first floor extension was to limit the depth to 2.9 metres. We actually removed an additional ensuite from one of the plans, which enabled a reduction to 2.4 metres, well within the suggested depth, and as you can see from the plans, back from the 45-degree line. In respect of the roof to the new kitchen area, the eaves height has been lowered to 2.4 metres, and the angle kept as shallow as possible. You'll see that the peak of the new kitchen roof would be meeting the house at a level just above the bottom of the existing skylight. The existing sloping roof at the back, built during the first extension, was built to observe the 45-degree line from the bedroom of number 36. The proposed small extension to bedroom 3 on the current plans also observes this line. The properties that we'll discuss tonight are all lucky enough to be facing directly south facing, with relatively low level trees across the neighbouring gardens, so that all 3 properties receive good sunlight throughout the day. We have worked with our architect and planning officer to minimise the impact on number 36 in the morning and number 40 in the evening, which is noted in the report. So in summary, hopefully what I've set out this evening has helped you better understand what we are seeking to achieve with our proposed extension, and I hope you see fit to grant us the planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you take a seat on the back there, we'll sanitise the table, as they say, and await our next speaker. Right, our next speaker is Marco Kikos. Thank you. Again, you have up to 5 minutes to speak. When you press the button, the light comes on, and we'll give you 30 minutes warning towards the end. So in your own time.
Okay. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present these objections to this planning application. What we want to do is to reiterate and summarise our objections to this application on 3 grounds. Firstly, the overdevelopment of the site, as this would be the second 2-storey extension to the property, which would further significantly increase the property's footprint and mass on the plot. Secondly, the overbearing nature of the proposed development. As you can see, slide 1 here is a sketch plan of the rear of the property of ours, and it illustrates the orientation to of the proposed extension in relation to our kitchen and dining room. So at the bottom you have our dining room, our kitchen and conservatory, and above you have the existing kitchen of 38 and then the proposed extension. This proposed extension would further extend by 3.9 metres along our boundary. As a result, the entire side of our house would be looking at the brick wall of the 2 extensions combined. Can we look at slide 2, please? So that's a view from our existing kitchen showing the existing extension wall. So we have a second kitchen window which would have the same view after this extension is done. Thirdly, we object to this on the grounds that it significantly reduce the amenities to our property. Our property is a semi-detached property, basically southeast facing, and our dining room and kitchen windows get the sun from 7 AM to 2 PM. Currently we enjoy sunlight pretty much all day in our kitchen, and this would reduce it significantly in the early morning. The overall impact of our rear of our property, both inside and outside, would result in a loss of light and the sense of a closed-in feeling, and would basically negatively impact our residential amenities. Can we look at slide 3? So slide 3 is a view from our dining room window. On the left, you can see the current extension, and the new extension would go to the middle of the third panel above the planter. So that wall would be extended up to there. So as you can see, that would significantly reduce light in our dining room. When the plans were originally proposed in October 2020, we did invite the neighbours at number 38 to view the impact that this proposal would have. And we discussed it, and we discussed compromises that would alleviate the pressure on the dining room and the kitchen. We also presented those to Councillor Bansal when he asked us what would be acceptable as a compromise. That's all I had to say for this.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've heard from the two speakers. I think if the officer, Mr. Sharman, do you want to respond to any of the points? I didn't personally noted many of the first speaker, but there was, as I say, 3 points made by the second speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So did not note down that the 3 points, the first of which being overdevelopment, as reviewed in the officer report, whilst the property has had a 2-storey side extension in the past, given the size of the site, the distance to boundaries, in the context of the site, it's not considered that the 2-storey rear extension and the additional single-storey and roof works would be overdevelopment of the site. And furthermore, in relation to the overbearing and the overshadowing issues, the scheme has been revised throughout various iterations. The scheme has been reduced in terms of the eaves height towards the neighbour. It's now sitting at 2.45 metres. And the element of the scheme closest to the neighbour is the single-storey aspect in terms of number 36. So the single-storey aspect here. So the assessment in terms of the lighting impact is, again, whilst it will be visible as a new boundary feature, effectively, it wouldn't have a significant impact as required by the policy tests on the amenities of the neighbouring occupants.
Thank you. Right, that takes us to the debate. Who wants to start the debate this evening on this one? Councillor Bailey, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I was a little bit sort of concerned when our second speaker said that the extension would go to the middle of the third panel. Could we actually see that slide, do you think, please? Where the cursor is there, at what height would the wall be at that stage in the middle of that third panel, please?
The eaves of the extension would be 2.45 metres.
So you've got 2.5 metres plus the height, oh, but it's a sloping roof, isn't it?
Correct, it's a sloping roof.
Mm-hmm. So these are south-facing gardens. What amount of light would they be losing, the sunlight coming in, do you think? Bearing in mind the eaves is 2.4 metres at the middle of that third panel.
So in context, a boundary treatment between properties can be up to 2 meters tall. So I think the fence there at the moment is about 1.8 meters in height. And I think further for context, there is an image. So the eaves height is similar to the existing eaves height here in terms of where it will pull along. So in terms of what they can do under permitted development for a boundary treatment, it's obviously fairly low in that respect. So the impact would be on kind of very late in the year or in the winter months when the sun is lower in the sky. There'd be more of an impact than when the sun is higher in the sky, obviously. So the assessment's been made looking at those factors, and it's not considered to be a significant impact.
I think that's really helpful, actually. Between the 1.8 at the top of the fence and 2.4 meters at the eaves, it makes it easier for me to understand. So thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? No? I'm looking for somebody to propose and second. Councillor Mason, you prepared to propose?
Yes, I'm prepared to propose.
I don't know
I'm
what's up with your
prepared to
microphone. You've got
propose.
what I call feedback from the old days, but you're prepared to propose the motion.
Yes, I'm
The
prepared to
recommendation.
propose, yes.
Have you got a seconder? Councillor Major, you're prepared to second. So we have a proposer, Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Major. Time to go to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation to grant planning permission subject to the conditions, all those raise their hand, please. Anyone against? Councillor Thomas, 1 against. 9 for and 1 against. Thank you. I think that concludes this evening's business. I don't think there's any other items now. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you to our speakers that's still here, and wish you a safe journey home.